Welcome back to Ford Friday. We're once again working on a 1965 Mustang rebuild project. I had a little free time, let's see what we can get done. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this whole body lift, so we're gonna have to make it fit. So last time when I set the body down on the chassis, it wasn't just to show you guys what I'm doing. That was part of it. But part of it is I need to see where things fit and where they don't. And I can take all the measurements I want, but to actually see it sitting on here and realize exactly where I need to cut, it's much easier, at least in my mind. So we're going to do this process quite a few times. Set the body down, take our measurements, see where we need to trim, take the body off, trim those points out, put the body back on, and see how much further we got. Eventually, hopefully, we'll get the body all the way down onto the frame. Now, it's going to take a while, might be boring, but this is what we got to do. Now, if I make hasty cuts and just trim everything out and throw it together, I'm left with big gaps I have to fill or parts I have to change. And I already have a couple down there that we're going to worry about later. And they're 2015 Mustang parts. They're pretty easy to come by. Not a huge deal. I may not need them. Depends on how things work out. Once it's down, we'll figure it out. So in addition to showing you guys exactly what I was doing and showing me where I need to trim, this whole little process we did last time was a huge motivation for me. There's a lot of things I'd much rather be doing than working on this car. So now that I can see it starting to take shape, I kind of want to work on it again. So we're going to keep going. Unfortunately, the next step in the process is to take a step back. Sometimes you got to go back to go forward. So we're going to pull the body back off so that we can start trimming some of our 2015 away to see how far we can get it to fit next time.
So we have to hook up our mobile frame rack. I guess today that would make it our lift. Put our clamps on there for extra safety. Somewhere there's an OSHA manual exploding. We're going to have to revise this. It doesn't give me the most control when lowering the body, so I'll find a better way. We'll lift up the back end. Slightly more OSHA compliant. I'll lift up the front a little more. It seemed to go together better than it's coming apart. That is not what I expected. So now that the 65 body is completely separated from the 15, I can lift it up out of the way and then just roll the chassis out unobstructed. And now I'm reliving my glory days of my job in the circus. So now we can set our body back down on our jack stands, not of the Harbor Freight variety. I would never do something without using the highest level of safety available. And here we go. More spot welds. We're going to drill our 1/8 inch pilot holes to take this top cowl panel off. So I finally broke down and got some new gloves. And I could use them, but it seemed to agitate a lot of people to wear the old ones. So I'm going to do that, at least for a little while. Yes, I know they make spot weld drills. We'll get to that in a minute. Now we can drill our 5/16 holes. We're not going to drill all the way through, just enough to get through that first layer so we can separate the panels. That was a little too far. So now we'll put our breaker in there, separate all these welds. I don't use the air chisel on this one because I want to save both of these panels. The air chisel has a tendency to destroy things. There will be plenty of other parts we can destroy later. So our panel's off. We can jack it up in the right front corner. We're going to pull this plate out of here. I can set it back down. And drill some more spot welds. Put our pilot holes. And our 5/16. I need to heat up the seam sealer that's in there. This is actually some structural bonding adhesive in there too. That was our favorite tool. I decided I didn't care what happened to these pieces.
I win.
Pull our plastic out of there and start drilling out the top. Just going to cut the end of it with the grinder so we don't have to remove that upper rail. Now we can go on to the driver's side. Drill our pilot holes. And drill our 5/16 and cut our piece with the grinder. I decided not to separate this piece. Wasted a little time I didn't have to on the other side. So we'll save it this time. Break out the rest of the spot welds. We leave a little spot weld drilling stress and show the little piece of plastic who's boss. I'm gonna take the Sawzall. We're gonna cut this little piece out of the way. Not really sure why. Just kind of annoyed me. Actually, we need it out of the way so I can get to the back of that rocker. Because I need a break from drilling spot welds, we're gonna go work on the 65 for a while. We're gonna take the wiper motor out. Probably the easiest access we've ever had to a 1965 Mustang wiper motor. So we'll pull the clip off that hold the two arms on. And we'll pop each arm off. And now we can unbolt the wiper motor. This is under the dash. Really kind of inconvenient. So back to our 2015. So we're going to scribe the floor where these seat mounts go. So when we go to put them back on, we'll know exactly where they go. And now we can drill our spot welds. Not going to drill any pilot holes in these, just because I'm putting them back on and I'd like a backing without any holes in it. We can knock our ends loose with the air chisel. Hammer them flat. And there is one bolt that holds it together. Now we can start breaking out our spot welds and pry that piece out. There's always that one weld that just won't play nice.
Ooh, a penny. So we needed this piece out because we're going to have to narrow it when we narrow our floor. So we'll flange the ends of these and weld them up against our frame rail on our other car. We also will need to be able to weld these up across the floor here, so we need this out of the way.
Okay, back to more spot welds. We're going to pull this rocker out of here.
I do make fun of Ford a lot, but sometimes they do stuff that I do like. Putting bolts in here, it's actually pretty nice. They pretty much use a lot of these just to hold these panels together before they weld it, I would imagine. I mean, it's all welded anyway. So when I'm putting it back together, it definitely makes it a little easier. Of course, I'm going to throw all this away, but if I was actually building a Mustang 15, that would be kind of nice to work with. But I think I'm going to save this little piece. This is where you mount the T-hook for towing. Insert Ford joke here.
So now I'll use that spot weld drill everybody wants me to use so badly. And I'll show you why we're not going to use it for long. Oh, so we made it through 3 welds before we broke both sides of our bit.
So to all the why don't you use the spot weld drill bits? Well, that's why. They suck.
So back to our old method, where I've been using both of the same drill bits for the entire car. Now we can pop our little bracket off with the air chisel. Now there's some seam sealer in the back, so we're going to heat it up from the outside so it scrapes off pretty easy. Remove the bolt that holds the rocker to the floor. And back to our favorite tool. Break some of these welds out of here. Get this piece out of the way so we can get down behind there. Now we're going to heat up the floor along the rocker here. There's seam sealer and there's also structural bonding adhesive. But first we're just going to get the seam sealer out of the way, just so we can see our welds. Once our welds are taken care of, then we can worry about the structural adhesive. If you notice the different colors in the steel, the lighter olive green is regular steel, the dark gray is high strength steel, so it's going to be kind of a challenge to drill through, but we need to remove it. Since I'm tired of drilling, we're going to grind out these welds up in the front. I'll use our air chisel to separate our rear seat mount and start separating the floor. I'll jack that piece up, see if we can break some of those welds out of there. Use the tension on there to make it a little easier. There, we got most of them off. Just a couple left.
In the pile. Would you look at that? 60 cents. And the haters said I couldn't make any money doing this.
So now I can grind the last little piece out of here. And onto the driver's side. I'm going to heat up that seam sealer. Scrape it out of the way. We're just going to do little sections. Try to do the whole thing at once. It doesn't stay hot long enough. So now the last little part here. They used a lot in this corner. Run an archaeological dig through the seam sealer to find this bolt. We got it. And there's another one. We'll pull that one out too. So now back to our spot welds. I'm tired of spot welds. So we got our 1/8 inch holes. Now I'll drill our 5/16 holes. Now we can separate this seat bracket. Now we'll do the rear seat bracket. And now to our little tow hook mount. Knock it off of there. Now we can pull our bolts out. And drill some more spot welds. Who would have guessed? Separate our panels. Grind the front off. Turns out those fancy new gloves don't last very long with sparks. Use the air chisel to separate the bottom. Use our breaker to separate the top. And then move on to the back. So now there's a part you didn't see on the other side. We're going to put our makeshift scraper in there. We're not trying to separate these welds. We're just trying to spread them apart a little bit so we can get our breaker in there. Because I'm not going to drill these out, I'm just going to use the breaker to break the welds right off. Because the rocker is thicker, it's not going to tear. I'd prefer not to rip too many holes in the floor. So in order to do that, put the breaker at about a 30-degree angle, even 45, and you hammer it into the rocker. It'll tear right through the weld and leave you with minimal holes in the floor piece. So we'll just go right above each weld, go straight through it. Hammer it back flat again, and we have minimal holes. Didn't have to waste any time drilling. So now we can heat up the floor to get rid of the structural adhesive, what we didn't break out with our breaker. And now we can persuade this rocker piece to come off. There's always one. Now we can trim out a little bit of these rear wheel wells. We can use the air chisel on this because the piece on the car is pretty thick and we don't care what happens to the wheel well pieces. So we'll just hit them with the air chisel, they'll tear right off. It won't hurt our piece that we're saving. cut the end of it off. No drilling required. I need to get rid of some of this floor here. It's going to be a little too tall. Do the same thing on the passenger side. And we'll take out that wheel well. Run the air chisel across it to open up the gap a little bit. Then we can knock each of the spot welds out. Grind the little end of it off. And our piece is off. So now we can heat up some more seam sealer, because we haven't had enough yet. These gloves did not make it. One episode. Next time I'll stop grinding with them on. So we'll cut some of the seam sealer. Hopefully we won't have to take the rest of it out and put our new seam sealer in up to it. We'll get all this out of the way. Less seam sealer to do next time.
So I ended up not taking these seat supports out because there were no welds in the floor to the rocker. They just glued it on. So the only spot welds were up here, so I didn't need to take it out. Now when I narrow it, if I can narrow this without having to remove it, it'll save me drilling all those spot welds out. Worst case scenario, I just take it out later. It has gotten a lot narrower, but we still need to go a little bit more. Right about where this line is here. We need to bring everything in that far. This isn't as tough as the rockers, so it should cut pretty easy. We'll trim it, we'll bend it over, and be able to weld it to the side of our 65 frame rail. So, there's a lot more trimming to go. Next time, we're going to start trimming out some of our cowl over here so we can fit it up to our cowl over there. That's going to be our life for the next good portion of this build. Just keep trimming until it fits. I did order some parts for our 2015, the first parts I've actually had to order for this build since the 2 cars. So hopefully they'll be in next time and we can get them on our car, because we're going to need them on there before we start fitting everything together, and it'll give me a nice break from cutting and trimming metal. It's always nice to change parts that bolt on. So like this video if you found it interesting, share it if you think somebody else might. Subscribe to see the rest of this build or whatever else I'm working on. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.